Yes, you are on the right channel. No, there is nothing wrong with your internet connection. You are seeing a video for the rise of Sting as well as the Great Muta by popular request. I was a bit hesitant to do this video only because there's not a whole lot of material and a lot of it is just random magazine covers of these guys as they matured throughout their career. Early on, they weren't on many at all up until like the late 80s into the 90s. And my wrestling from that point on isn't my favorite. Be that as it may, I have great fondness for both of these wrestlers, especially the Great Muta. Absolutely is my absolute favorite wrestler from Japan. So we're going to go through the beginning of their career in the magazines, actually on the cover of the magazines, and I'm going to take you inside the magazine just at a couple of appearances early on as they first started. So the first mention out of the two, this is going to be in order from 85 through the present day. So the first person mentioned out of Sting and the Great Muta was the Great Muta. He is in this September 1986 issue of Wrestling Scene. He started in 1985, known as the White Ninja when he came to America. His pro debut was in 1984. Believe it or not, he and Sting are the same size. Sting was 6'2", 250, Muta 6'2", 230. And you wouldn't know that just because of the jacked up muscles on Sting's behalf. Muta first came to the States. He was trained by Hiro Matsuda in New Japan. Came to America, like I said, by Hiro Matsuda, and they put him in a tag team with Kendo Nagasaki early on. He was an instant success. Fans loved him because he was doing some crazy acrobatic wrestling that we have never seen up until that point. Reverse moonsaults, bat flips off the top rope, you name it, Muta was doing it early and before everybody else. The only other person would come close would be like, say, Tiger Mask. Next is Sting. He first appears in this issue of Wrestling Scene the following month, October of 1986. And here he is as Blade Runner Bash. He would also have a few names, Blade Runner Flash. It was Blade Runner Flash Borden, for his last name was Borden, so it was didn't really set too well when he went to the UWF. This was in his Memphis days when he was the Blade Runner. It's in this, like I said, this issue of Wrestling Scene. When he got with Bill Watts in the UWF 1 month later, Bill Watts changed his name to Sting, and it was Blade Runner Sting for the next several months after that. November 1986 takes a look at, not even taking a look at, it is a mention of the Florida heavyweight champion, Kendall Windham, losing the title to the White Ninja. The White Ninja, of course, is the Great Muta. Here is his first NWA heavyweight championship title, his first title period. He had great success early on. All the guys who held the NWA Florida Championship, they all went on to win to be an NWA champion. Most NWA champions were Florida champions, I should say. So they were headed for success when you're eyed up pretty early on in your career in Florida and looked at as a champion to be there. Although just the several weeks as champion, Kendall would get it back. This is a really rare, hard to find shot of Muta with the belt in Florida. Again, he's the White Ninja at this point. And it's inside this issue is the article, hardly even any mention of him winning it. It's mostly about Kendall losing the title to Muta, or the White Ninja. Next of the two to pop up in November of 1986 would be Muta again. And again, he's going by the Ninja, the White Ninja. Several months later, he would be known as the Black Ninja in Puerto Rico, and he would also hold the Puerto Rico Heavyweight Championship belt. So he has some really good success that most of the magazines didn't talk about early on. And here he is when he won the title from Kendall Windham in this issue here. Both guys, still no magazine covers yet. They're on their way. Sting is about to cover every other millionth magazine cover. You name it, he was on them later on. This issue here now has Sting and partnered up with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert in the UWF, and there was Sting's first world heavyweight title. It's considered the UWF, Universal Heavyweight Wrestling Championship Tag Team Champions, and he's partnered with Eddie Gilbert. They would hold the tag team titles 2 times, and Rick Steiner on the bottom here when he was also with Eddie Gilbert's alliance, and he would also partner up with Sting quite a bit, more so when they both joined over in Crockett for that merger. There's also an article in here about Sting and Hot Stuff. I really like Sting at this point. I liked him in the UWF. I liked him with Eddie Gilbert. I thought they were a cool tag team. Different. One guy with makeup, one guy without, one guy big and muscular, the other guy short and faster. I just thought it was a cool mix. Bill Watts always put together really good champions, oddball, different champions, guys you wouldn't think of, like, Big Bubba Rogers, the one-man gang, Bam Bam, Gordy, guys that, never held world titles anywhere else were getting shots in the UWF, and I always liked Bill Watts' booking. Here's Sting and Gilbert's first pull-out poster. This was on a cover, inside the magazine of a wrestling Superstar Wrestlers was the magazine. This came out by accident. I've had it loose for a number of years since it popped loose, and I just always kept it because I thought it was just a really cool looking shot of those two guys. Finally now, Sting making his first magazine cover, and it's on the cover of Wrestling All-Stars magazine. This is February 1988. So it took about 3 years for Sting to make it to a magazine cover. Muta still has not been on a cover yet, including the Japanese magazines. And early on in the mid-'80s, this was dominated by Fujinami, Inoki, of course. They were getting most of your heavyweight, most of your heavy coverage on the magazine covers in Japan. Giant Baba also. Muta was really kind of low on the totem pole in Japan. Actually, at this point, he may not even been going by Muta yet. He left Florida, went to Puerto Rico, went back to Japan again, working in some tag teams before he would emerge himself again as the Great Muta with the makeup. So this isn't really happening right now in '88 for him. Things are a little bit dormant, so as you see as we go on. The merger with UWF and NWA Crockett just happens. This is a December 26th, 1987. Sting gets his first crack at Flair, or first run at Flair, and this is in the Philadelphia Civic Center lineup sheet. This was also issue number 1 for NWA Pro Digest. And this was a premiere issue of the magazine, and it was also the first run. It was given out as the first run of a program to get it kicked off and started with the fans. So Sting now challenging with Flair. Sting on the cover of Wrestling World, March of 1988. And Sting, which I failed to mention, Sting, as he joins the NWA Crockett, he joins as a face. That was a different switch for him, and now once you see him as a face, he starts making the magazine covers. You'll see the heels hardly were covered. So it was mostly faces on the magazine covers, especially when you were a younger guy. Didn't make mention of that in that last issue of him on All Stars, and I should have. May of 1988, Sting is also back here teaming up with Rick Steiner and going up against the fabulous Freebirds, and this one's in Chicago, Illinois. With another UWF NWA merger, and there's the program front cover of that there. Sting's popularity continues to grow. Lex Luger also in the heel column, and the two win the Crockett Cup. And here they are on the cover of Wrestling 88, the summer edition. Good looking cover of two muscle men. Also on the cover of Inside Wrestling, September 88, Sting and Luger with the Crockett Cup. And also talking about Jerry Lawler as the AWA champion, Savage, the WWF champion, and the Parade of Champions with Kerry Von Erich and Iceman King. Sting now gets his first cover in a match, taking on Ric Flair, and it's his first in-action shot with Flair on the cover, first of several. This is June of 1988 of The Wrestler. I showed this magazine because a big reason Sting even continued on in wrestling, who knows where he would have went had this not happened, he was going to be cut from the lineup in Crockett's territory, and Crockett went to the Road Warriors and asked, "What do you want to do with this guy?" Because he has your look, and and Road Warrior Animal is on record saying, "No, we can keep him. We'll use him as our brother in paint, and we could do some six-mans. We could do this and that with him. Definitely, good guy." And they kept him on. Who knows if the Road Warriors could have said, "Absolutely not, get rid of that dude," where he would have went and how different his career may have been. No one will ever know for sure, but it was thanks to the Road Warriors that leaned heavily on the decision of Crockett keeping him in the NWA territory. This is a giant pinup poster magazine, kind of a difficult issue to find. If you do, it's on the expensive side as well. Another program early on, a young look at Sting. Same photo as that Wrestling All-Stars cover from the first issue he was on. This is a photo shoot from the same, and this is him and his first Great American Bash. This one was the night, Wednesday, July 13th, Louisville, Kentucky, and just trying to see, he's in 8-man tag team cage match with Sting, Luger, Nikita Koloff, and Dusty, taking on the Four Horsemen as the main event. Sting gets his first PWI cover, April 1988. Sting again, Superstar Sting, destined to be NWA World Champion. You see it first printed in Wrestling World, October 1988. Could it be Sting getting a world title? Most people would say absolutely not. Not in the same lineage as Lou Thesz, Buddy Rogers, Harley Race, and then you would see Sting. That's quite the opposite, but the times were certainly changing. Excuse me, I have been sick and my allergies have been brutal, so bear with me if I sneeze and lose my voice. Try to get through this the best I can without killing you guys. Another program, NWA, another matchup early on for Sting in 88. This is towards the end of the year, November 1988, and we've got Sting and Luger taking on the Road Warriors. Road Warriors now turning heel, and Luger and Sting, the top tag team who just won the Crockett Cup, taking on the Road Warriors who won the Crockett Cup some of the years before. November 30th, 1988, at a house show in San Francisco, Cal. I got a million of these programs. I just pulled out a couple early on just to show some Sting matches because there was like hardly anything with him early on. So once you see 88 hit and then the floodgates opened up for Sting, you see his popularity. He just skyrocketed between mostly the kids and stuff like that was mostly like really digging him. December 88, Sting and Flair on another cover together, their second in-action cover shot, and it's gold belt wrestling, going with their all-new design, just changing from the other format to this newer format, which I like a lot better. Sting and Flair once again on the cover, Ringside Wrestling, September 88. Good-looking shot of Sting with Flair getting his hair grabbed, almost like the same same cover there. Another lineup, Road Warriors NWA program for the Bunkhouse Stampede preview, December 29th, 1988, and we got Sting taking on Road Warrior Hawk, Dusty Rhodes taking on Road Warrior Animal. Those two would also team up, Sting and Dusty taking on the Road Warriors also in some great matches, a few of those being on television. Great times in the NWA, late in the NWA's Crockett career. Things are about to change pretty soon for the NWA and for Crockett, sad to say. March of 1989, and Sting gets the Year Wrestler Award in 1988. March. The March issue is the PWI year. I'm not sure if he got Wrestler of the Year or not. Actually, didn't look. He got some kind of award for whatever he did. It could have been for Wrestler of the Year. I didn't check to even look. But PWI, it's his second PWI cover. In Ringside Wrestling, taking on Barry Windham. Notorious for not putting the year on. I'm just going to say March of 89. It's got to be because we're in 89. March of 89, Sting taking on Barry here, getting choked out with Barry Windham's towel. And March 89, Wrestling Power, Sting on the cover. As you'll see, Sting now is just everywhere, flooding the market. Here he is with his old tag team partner from the Blade Runners, the Ultimate Warrior, and Sting versus the Ultimate Warrior in a Super Dream Fantasy match, just like Wrestling Superstars was notorious for doing in its early days, all the way through till the magazine finished. They'd always have these great fantasy matchups, and there it is. That would never happen, though. They would team up one more time on Nitro some years later, but nothing really ever came of it. Sting and Luger on their cover again, August 1989. Does their friendly rivalry lead to an all-out war? Time will tell. Sting would be winning the television championship and never mentioned on a cover of a magazine. Hardly anything mentioned inside the magazines. No pictures of Sting inside the magazines with pinups with him with the TV belt early on. Great Muta makes his United States magazine cover debut on the cover of The Wrestler, December of 1988, and Muta took the Sting out of Sting. What happened was basically both of them were undefeated. Muta being highly pushed. No, not Sting was undefeated. Muta is undefeated. Muta is being pushed heavily in the NWA and managed by Gary Hart. The match. Sting got the fall of the match. He wins. As later review, Muta had his arm up thanks to Gary Hart's complaining, and the match was considered a no contest because Muta's arm was clearly up. So it was set to a draw, and those two were to meet again. They met again, and Muta took it to him. And here's your first look at Muta on the cover of Gong, the Great Muta, and now he's with his TV championship belt. Also, Larry Zbyszko, Western States Heritage. The Ric Flair with the NWA World title, and on the bottom is Vader with the IWGP Heavyweight Championship belt on his first look as him as IWGP champion. He would hold that belt 3 different times. Hard to get him on a cover with that belt, and here's just one of possibly just, I think, 2. Muta now starting to get some recognition. Fans were really eating him up as well. Although he was a heel managed by Gary Hart, he had a lot of fans behind him, and the fans were really kind of pushing him and cheering him, turning him some kind of a face, but luckily it never really happened. Muta now with the white face paint, Sting in the headlock, October 1989. Sting and the Great Muta together. Muta's now his first PWI cover, although not alone. Nonetheless, it's still Muta's first PWI cover. I think quite possibly his last. This is December 1989's issue with Sting and Muta on the cover together. Sting's feud with Flair had ended. He went for the NWA World title and came up short. Terry Funk, next man in line. Terry Funk is also in Gary Hart's army at the end of the match. Flair jumped, green spew, spit in Flair's face thanks to Muta. Funk doing some damage on Flair on the cover of Ringside, December 1989. And Muta again on another real good cover. Muta with the green face paint far in the corner. If you look real quick and you'll miss him up there, kind of looking like the Hulk. And this is winter of '89's issue of the Great Muta, his very first interview. And inside this issue talks about his career, how he started, how Gary Hart is the greatest thing that ever happened to him, and so forth. The Flair-Funk War would continue March 1990, and thanks to the help of the Great Muta on the bottom. And Sting comes out to save the day, and Sting and Muta again square off. And they continued their heat. Muta on the cover, May of 1990, with the World TV Championship belt. And like I was saying, Muta was extremely popular as well, but a heel. And it was rumored, and I only know this because it was said by Jim Ross, that Muta was in line to be the NWA champion and to take it quickly from Flair, and it just never happened. And I thought that would have been very interesting, very different. It would be the first Oriental champion, first face-painted champion. To that point, still, there was no masked champion to ever hold the NWA title. That wasn't until the Blue Demon Jr. Some years later on in the 2000s, which NWA, of course, wasn't the same as it is at this point. Muta gets a great cover with his gear on, looking like the Great Kabuki, rumored to be the Great Kabuki's son by Gary Hart. Of course, that was just in kayfabe, but he took on quite the persona from the Great Kabuki. The headdress, the gear, the face paint, and the sputum spitting out the different colors of red and green. February 1990, Sting and Luger back on top. Who will become the NWA World Champion over my dead body? And back and forth is the friendly tussle with Luger and Flair, soon to be a war in some months and years ahead that would continue on for a good decade or so. Sting and Muta on the cover of Sports Review, March 1990, on the year-end review of 1989. More coverage of those two in that review. April 1990, Muta taking on Flair for the NWA World title. He gets his crack at the belt, and like I just explained a minute ago, was in question for the championship, but didn't get there. Exclusive coverage of the war with Flair in this issue, April 1990. Sting, spring of 1990, New Year's resolutions, and Sting is wanting the title. Back on the cover with his old tag team partner, the Ultimate Warrior, now the Intercontinental Champion, both face-painted men moving up the ladder of success with each individual's company. Roddy Piper gets the main page of Sports Review February 90, but it's continued on with the Great Muta and Ric Flair war continued in the top. More information inside. Iron Men Starrcade 89, and one of the weaker of all of the Starrcades, to say the least. That was, more of an acquired taste. Muta takes on Sting once again. Everyone, I forget what it was. It was a 5-minute match or a 10-minute match or whatever it was, and it was ran on points, and you could win, or if you got pinned, you could still win. It was just some ridiculous concept. I watched it once or twice and really had no interest in it ever again. April of 90, Sting and Muta would meet one more time. Muta has really great face paint on here. It's the white face paint with the black. It was known as the Demon makeup. You don't see it on too many magazine covers. You will see it again around 90s, like mid-99 or so, but that was a really cool look Muta had there. And it also had a different outfit for that. June of 1990, Sting, tragedy strikes Sting. How you can help him recover. Read the article and find out. May 90, Sting on the cover, once again, the Ultimate Warrior with the Intercontinental title. Sting's friendship, and him and Flair still talking about battling back and forth. Who will come out victorious? What will happen? Sting going for the title once again, giving it a second run after his coming up short just a little bit on his first run in 88 and 89. Optimistic about a 90-91 championship, but still yet Sting here fighting for the gold, almost there. On the cover, October 1990. Sting wants you. Free membership now. You can sign up and become a membership of the Sting fan club. And it happens. Sting defeats Ric Flair. Dream come true. Ric Flair goes down to the Stinger. Sting wins the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, the big gold, November of 1990, and great looking shot of Sting looking at the side, looking at the gold over his shoulder, makeup all worn off just after his battle and his first magazine cover as champion. Luger, first person there to congratulate him, but is he really there as a friend, or is he there to knife him in the back because he wants the title himself? Sting getting his hand raised after the bash, and Sting wearing the gold, first time on the Wrestler, November 90. Sting on everything, including cereal boxes with the belt at this point, November 90, ringside wrestling with the gold. Sting on WCW's magazine with the gold, also taking on Sid Vicious in a small feud, which would have been a unique champion over there with Big Sid and the belt. Looks pretty good with Sid there. These are difficult and hard to get and could cost you a few dollars too. These wrestling roundups from WCW didn't last long. This is issue 2, number 12, 1990. Sting on the cover. All of the face-painted wrestlers of the 80s and 90s come in for one collage on the cover of Wrestling USA, with the Warriors, the Demolition, and the Blade Runners. Luger captures the United States Heavyweight Championship, number 1 man in line for the title. Sting holding the gold here, and this is January 91. Sting on the cover again, Wrestling USA of April 91. And a little different looking paint there, adding some black to it, giving it a little bit of a break from the pastels and the, what I would call like the Saved by the Bell look with all those funky colors. About to, hit pretty hard in the 92-93 era of the Surfer Boy Sting, which I couldn't really stand at all. Taking a look at all your champions, the NWA US Heavyweight Champions, the Ultimate Warrior also now captures the WWF Heavyweight Championship, and he is featured on the cover next to Sting, who was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Who would have thought it just some 5-6 years before, as they made their debut in Memphis. Also went by the Freedom Fighters, I think they were for a short time, then back to the Blade Runners. The Blade Runners splitting off and each becoming World Heavyweight Champions. That's pretty much, that's something. Sting in the far corner up in the right-hand side, May of 1990 Sports Review with the gold. And like I said, he'd be hitting every magazine cover everywhere. September of 90, Sting and the Steiners. Also talking about Sting and Luger as a tag team. Sting and the Ultimate Warrior, how did they both get their start? Goes into detail of how their career got started. I basically just told you everything. Saves you from having to buy the issue. Why am I showing this? This is Battle at the Tokyo Dome. Fujinami defends the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Ric Flair, defeats Flair for the NWA World Title. Sting takes on Muta again for the first time since 1988 or 89. Coverage of that is also in this issue. The following issue, this is the issue Fujinami won the belt, and it's got some great in-color shots of their Starrcade 91, not the Starrcade 91. This is Starrcade at the Tokyo Dome 91. Good-looking shot of Sting getting sprayed in the face with Muta. There's quite a few pages in here of their match. And like I said, I'm not really a big fan of the Gong and Monthly Pro from the when they went to the weekly issues. For this reason only, they stopped doing great photos like this and started giving you a million shots like this. I just was not a fan of small photos like that. So I just, the other ones in the 70s and 60s had giant, great in-action shots, and these give you real small ones. Just personal preference and just mine, I just didn't care for it. But this issue here has the coverage of their 91 issue. The American magazines didn't really even touch it. They barely covered Fujinami winning the title, just a little bit. I think he's on Sports Review, but hardly anything with Sting. And that would be your first look at those two in color for one of their matches. So it was pretty interesting to see that. And then once again, in Gong's weekly issue, they have Sting and Muta together. But this issue also, this is rather expensive, and it comes with several posters. One being a giant poster of Sting. I'm probably not going to fit it in here, but you'll get the idea. Here is a 24 by whatever the freak size poster they have of Sting and Flair. It should have been Sting and Muta, but if you get this issue, make sure that the posters are in it. That's why they charge you, not why, but a big reason why a lot of them are very expensive. Always make sure the posters are included. Some sellers will act stupid. Oh, what do you mean poster? But if they're saying that, stay away from it, because that means they're trying to pull one over on you and the poster's not there. It's really hard to not identify the poster not being there. It's so big. Is it Sting? Halloween Havoc? No, it's Barry Windham. Really looked good. It's pretty convincing. Pretty weird angle. during the match. The fake Sting runs out and fools everybody. No one was expecting that. WCW, now at this point was sold. Crockett no longer had it, and it's being ran by different people, and they had some different ideas, and this was just another one. And it was over pretty good. I mean, people were like confused. They're like, "What the hell?" But faking Sting was pretty good, and you will see that happen again later on in about 7 or 8 years from here in the future. Sting on the cover of Inside Wrestling, January of 1992, and just a memo from a maniac. Sting Sting now the United States champion in the WCW, and Lex Luger is the new WCW Heavyweight Championship. We're like, wait a second, what happened? Flair was just the NWA champion. How was Lex Luger becoming the WCW champion? What is this? We'll get to that in a second. WCW continues on, business as usual, minus the name of NWA. They're on the cover, both of them as champion, and they will be looking to face each other real soon in the future, winter of 91. Real soon in the future, as in quite soon, and Super Brawl. And Sting would take on Luger in Super Brawl and win the WCW World title. Now he's a 2-time champion. Here is Sting with the belt at the end results, all covered from Super Brawl here in June of 92's issue of Sports Review. So once again, Sting recaptures the belt. Inside Wrestling has Sting for the first time on the cover, presented with a championship belt, and here he is, and here we are as well, the funky colors and the Surfer Boy look. Not a big fan of it too much. July of 1992, cover of WCW magazine, Sting with the WCW belt once again. Macho Man Savage, since winning the WWF title, no longer is the Ultimate Warrior the champion. Sting in a fantasy match once again with Sting for the Pro Wrestling Illustrated match of the century, Battle of the Century, they're calling it, for September 1992. Look of both champions. So to answer the question of what happened quickly, we're going to go through this fast because it's crazy and it's long, and we're just going to keep it flowing here. NWA and the World Championship Wrestling, when Crockett sold, went their separate ways for a short time, and the NWA title had went to Japan. So when the NWA title went, they were the owners of the big belt. The big belt was defended now in Japan. And WCW went through some management changes and some different people in the office and corporate, and things got real ugly. And then things started to calm down a little bit. Cooler heads prevailed. Some new people came over, and then NWA kind of walked its way back in to the life of WCW, but never to where it would be like it was once before. So WCW wrestlers would partner up with New Japan, and they would be a tournament held in what would become the G1 Climax. The winner of the G1 Climax would become the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. This belt would also be defended in WCW as well as New Japan. They still have their WCW Heavyweight Champion. New Japan still has their IWGP Heavyweight Champion. This is just the NWA, separate entity under the umbrella of the two companies. So rather than being in one, it's being in two. The winner of the G1 Climax was Masahiro Chono, and Chono here featured with the big gold belt. And that's where the NWA is at this point. Moving forward, the new IWGP champion, Fujinami, has lost the title to Riki Choshu. Riki Choshu is now the IWGP champion as well as the greatest 18 World Heavyweight Champion. You might be saying, what the fuck is the greatest 18? This greatest 18 title lineage dates back to 1979 when Antonio Inoki won the WWF Martial Arts Heavyweight Championship belt. At that time, Inoki was in the WWF. He would become a representative from New Japan in Japan with his company in New Japan, and the WWF had a tournament and awarded Inoki with the championship belt. I guess, he wasn't going to get the heavyweight championship belt from Backlund, although he did. They gave him, a different title to defend, and it was quite prestigious in Japan. It was honored and respected, and some good men actually held that belt. It would be continued on throughout the years, not talked about in America, but certainly would be in Japan. So for the first time, the two belts had merged, and now Choshu is the champion. Just to show you what the martial art belt was, here is Inoki. After winning the martial art belt in '79, you see him receiving the trophy, and he's wearing the martial art belt. This was a big fight series program after he defeated Tiger Jeet Singh in '79. This to be April 5th, to be exact. So, the Great Muta, re-emerging since not seeing on a cover of a magazine for a while, defeats Riki Choshu, and he is now the greatest 18 heavyweight champion and the IWGP heavyweight champion. So kind of running simultaneously with Sting's championship of the WCW, Muta now the king of the hill, the world champion IWGP in New Japan. Those two have been going neck and neck their entire careers up until this point. And it's been really interesting to watch how similar they are, what a superstar they had become in their own territory. Now, Muta is a heel at this point, and he still has the popularity as Sting would have had in the United States. So it's really interesting. Both of them, complete opposites, but yet so much alike. This is Muta's first look of him with the two belts. Hard to see, but he has both belts with him right here, and it's a good-looking shot of him on Weekly Pro special emergency issue. We were just talking, to another one of you guys that asked me about some Japanese issues, and there's a weekly issue, there's a monthly issue still, and then they would put out an emergency issue, or would be translated in America to us as urgent issue, and it says it right up here, urgent issue, separate from the weekly issue and the monthly issue Monthly Pro already put out. Very confusing shit in Japan. Next in line to take on the Great Muta and challenge for his greatest 18 title, as well as his IWGP championship coming back, the Great Muta defends against Antonio Inoki in a terrific blood war these two would have. And here it is on the cover of Gong, and this is May 23rd's issue. And that fight would continue on for a while. Great issue here of a bloody Inoki has Great Muta in a sleeper hold. Muta was just sprayed Inoki in the face. You see all the green mixed in with the blood, and great looking shot. Difficult issue to find, very expensive, great color inside this special emergency issue once again. Good to see Muta back on some covers of some magazines again. And back in America, 1982, as the magazines changed and went to some pretty terrible covers, we're actually getting a good-looking wrestling cover once again back in America. Summer of '92, Wrestling 92, Sting takes on the Rick Rude in one of the War Games. WCW magazine went to a double cover. These are kind of different. They had June of '92, and you flip it forward, and it has the heels on the other side for the Dangerous Alliance. And they were in a War Games together. You just seen the cover with Rude and Sting, and they just with the 5-on-5 War Game double cage matches continued on from when Bash '87 started. Big Van Vader, who was former IWGP champion, who we just seen on the cover not too long ago, steps up at the Great American Bash and defeats Sting for the WCW championship, shocks all the little Stingers, everyone's depressed and crying, and I was pretty super happy to see a big giant heavyweight as champion again. This is by far the biggest champion the NWA lineage would have, I should say. This is really only the third WCW champion, but it's in the same lineage as the NWA, of course, and to all the fans as well, because we really didn't see that switch over because the NWA title is in Japan now. This is signed by Sting, signed by Vader, and also Medusa on the cover of this November of '92 Inside Wrestling. Masahiro Chono, NWA World Champion. Got this one signed too. This was another tough one from my signed collection. Muta steps up for the challenge, being the IWGP champion and the greatest 18 champion. Let's settle this and let's see who's the real world champion. Like I said, the NWA title still gets a lot of clout and respect in Japan, and fans wanted to see this match big time, and they had it here is a program. Can't really fit it in here. This is a program to that night. Fantastic story, January 4th, 1993. This was basically wrestling, what do you call it? Wrestle Kingdom is what it's called now, Wrestling World. Before Wrestle Kingdom started. Just want to get to the page with Sting. This also had the Steiners losing the title to Power and Hawk, the IWGP titles. And here's both champions on the cover. Chono, NWA champion. Sorry for the glare, I know it sucks. And these programs are enormous, but you get the idea. Muta with the title, and what a feud, what a battle. It's like 1.5 times as tall and 1.25 times as thick as a magazine. Their programs were crazy. I couldn't imagine carrying that to an event or sticking it under your seat. It was like carrying an encyclopedia. It's so heavy and thick pages and shit. The champion, Muta, would defeat Chono and become the champion, hold all 3 titles. Titles merged now, IWGP and the NWA for the second time since Fujinami beating Flair. The Great Muta to this day, and I search sometimes hourly, every day without a doubt, for him on the cover of a magazine with the NWA big gold, and there is nothing. There has to be something. I refuse to give up, whether it's in Egypt, from South Africa to our friends across the pond in Liverpool, or across in Canada, down in Mexico. Somebody has to have a shot of Muta on the cover with the 10 pounds of gold, and I have to find it. It's been a 25-year mission. I haven't found it. I've seen not everything, but damn close. There's got to be one, and I'm still in search of it. The only thing I have is a signed 8x10 of the Muta. I have several signed 8x10s and several magazines signed by Muta, and this is all I have of him with the World Championship. Very tough to find him. I just cannot believe for the life of me they would not put Muta on the cover in Japan. There's got to be a special emergency issue somewhere that I've just not found yet. The adventure continues looking for that one. Meanwhile, Jake the Snake Roberts makes his appearance in WCW and has a battle with Sting, January 1993. The wrestler, WCW Special Collectors Issue number 4, Volume 3, number 1. A tough one to get sometimes. Sometimes it sells for a lot. Other times it sells for hardly anything. This is one of the better ones, and it's because Stanley Weston was running it at the time. Stanley Weston had it from late 92 through upwards to mid-93, I think. 94 was the cutoff, and it was ran well when Stanley Weston had it. And the same Stanley Weston from The Wrestler and Inside Wrestling. He actually did WCW magazine for 2 years. Another Stanley Weston issue for Battle Bowl WCW, Sting here. Ron Simmons would become the new champion, defeating Vader. This is signed by the Barbarian, Dustin Rhodes, Ron Simmons, and Ricky Steamboat. Another issue from Stanley Weston, Reader Awards goes to Sting, Most Popular Wrestler of the Year from WCW. Sting continuing to battle with Vader, June of 1993, Inside Wrestling. Now, since Flair had left the company and went to the WWF, becoming WWF Heavyweight Champion, has now made his return to the WCW, and he is looking for his title back. And Muta now defending that title in Japan as well as WCW, and he will go back and forth. He would end up losing that title to Barry Windham. Barry Windham takes the NWA title. And Flair is gunning for him now for this NWA World Title belt. Meanwhile, Vader is the WCW champion. Flair would battle Barry Windham. He is not on the cover of a magazine winning the 10 pounds of gold back. But August 2nd, 1993, Flair pins Windham, captures the NWA title on the cover of Pro Wrestling Weekly. I've had hundreds of these over the years, thrown them all out. I think I've kept, less than a dozen. They were okay. I mean, you wanted some information here and there. They were all right. It wasn't much, it was just pretty dry and to the point. It's not a magazine. It's got, maybe 15, 20 pages, less than that, I guess. I don't know. But it covered things that some of the magazines didn't go into great detail about, and it was put out, I think, every week. So I think it got 4 a month, if I'm not mistaken, and weekly. And this was covering, the only one that covered Wyndham's loss on the cover was the weekly issue. Flair would lose that title to ravishing Rick Rude. Only now the title would go from NWA World title after another falling out with WCW. This would be considered the WCW International Heavyweight Championship belt, defended in Japan and in WCW. Only now no longer affiliated with the NWA. Very confusing shit. On the cover here, this is signed by Dustin Rhodes, Sting, Vader, and the Nasties on the bottom. This is the fall issue of January issue of WCW 94, covering the Fall Brawl. Fall Brawl is where Rude won the title. Rude would also drop the title to Hiroshi Hase in Japan. Hiroshi Hase would drop the title back to Rick Rude probably less than a week later. Never discussed in America. No one ever knew about it. WCW International Heavyweight Champion Hiroshi Hase for a cup of coffee and out. Only magazine cover with him on the cover with it, smiling and happy with his girl. Yep, a lot of people never even knew he held it. Here it was. There it is. Meanwhile, Starrcade, 93, 10 years anniversary. Ric Flair takes on Big Van Vader for the WCW Heavyweight Championship belt and wins the title back. So Flair drops the title to Rude and takes it to Vader, and now is a champion again. Now the two champions, Rude and Flair. Those get confusing. Rick Rude drops the title to Sting. Sting, first time WCW International Heavyweight Champion / NWA Champion / former WCW Champion. October of 1994. Coverage of Sting's defeat against Rick Rude is in here. He's holding the belt up high. The only shot of him on the cover with the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship belt. Where does that leave us? That leaves us Sting, WCW International World Heavyweight Champion, versus Ric Flair, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. The madness has got to stop. The NWA is out of the picture. That would go on to a independent company, reemerge again slightly in the ECW, and just snowballed further downhill after that. WCW would continue to climb, and there has to be one world champion, Sting, versus Flair. I believe this was on a TBS Champions channel for TV. I don't really remember. Sting would drop the title to Flair. Flair would become the unified WCW heavyweight champion, getting the big gold back in his hands now, and that's the link to him getting back that big gold. And then the getting rid of this other belt, the WCW belt, would be no longer in existence. Meanwhile, after losing the title to Flair, Sting kind of flounders around a little bit and does a TV appearance with Hulk Hogan. And here they are on the cover of a magazine actually fighting each other in a movie. Fans would wish to see them have that match. Could it happen in the future? Who knows what the future might hold. July 1994, Sports Review, Sting and Hogan on a film set. Things are about to get a little bit confusing once again now in Japan. Not quite yet, but in a minute. Exit the Great Muta, enter Keiji Muto. Well, what the fuck does that mean? Muta took the face paint off and became a different personality altogether. Now he is a good guy, fan favorite, and he won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. So no longer is the spew spitting out of the mouth, no longer is the face paint, and no longer is he a demon heel. He is loved by the fans, and his name is Keiji Muto. Adding an O at the end of his name instead of an A, just to make it simple. We're going to continue calling him Muta, okay, just to make it less confusing. So here is your first cover, Keiji Muto as the champion, although it's his second championship. So each gimmick now Muta he has a championship with. Pretty successful no matter how you look at it. And again, a special emergency issue when he had the beard. Rare look at him with the beard. Beard quickly comes off, and Muta on top of the world, IWGP champion, smiling, happy-go-lucky, looking, like the fan favorite that he is, popular with the fans, and quite different than the mystical, magical Muta that once was. Muta would become the first IWGP heavyweight champion to ever win the Grand Prix, G1 Climax Grand Prix tournament, And here is Muta with the G1 Climax trophy for winning the Grand Prix tournament, and also the IWGP Championship belt. Hold your taters while this confusing piece comes in. I'll do my best to explain it. And it has a big tie-in to WCW later on here. So, the Great Muta defends the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. It's open to any challenger, and the next challenger to step in and take over, which would be considered a hostile takeover in Japan, the UWF Heavyweight Champion Nobuhiko Takada. This was booked, like I said, as an invasion. The UWF was their own company. It was based as a reality-based wrestling fighting organization with realistic storylines. Like I said, that were grounded in quote-unquote real fight, MMA of today-ish, but not like MMA, just a little bit stiffer, very stiff to say the least. In 1992, the UWF, just to keep it simple, because they were around in 1988 and then it disbanded and it came back again in 92. So in 1992, they unveiled what would be called the Real World Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Championship belt, and that would be presented to the champion, which is Nobuhiko Takada. This is the new UWF, and they strategically partnered with Lou Thesz, former NWA world champion. He took the position as commissioner of the UWF, just to give this some legitimacy behind it, letting them know, we're not, the cartoon-friendly wrestling company like the WWF. We're going to kick you in the face, knock you out, and you're going to be the best fighter in the world, kind of an attitude, and that was their approach. So Lou Thesz's 1950s NWA World Championship belt would be presented to the UWF heavyweight champion. So they brought that belt out that Thesz had from the 50s that he defended in Japan in 1957 against Ricky Dozan when Ricky Dozan won that title. That was being brought back to life after some 30 years out of retirement. This was to symbol, some authenticity behind it, to separate themselves from every other wrestling promotion, so they carried themselves at a higher standard. They went through extraordinary lengths to prove that they were the toughest wrestlers in the world and the realest fighters in the world. So much so by challenging the newly formed UFC fighters, the Shuto fighters from Japan, the Vale Tudo competitors in Brazil, as well as the new and formed Pancrase wrestlers / fighters in Japan. They had an open challenge to anybody who wanted to step up. Of course, it wasn't real. It was just a very super stiff wrestling style, and no other companies ever stepped up to challenge them. But possibly believing some of their own hype, they kind of overstepped their bounds a little bit. The UWF did, with one of their competitors, Yoji Andrew, challenging Rickson Gracie to a legitimate fight. This was huge news in Japan. But as most of you know, who know me personally, I am a judo and jiu-jitsu black belt, and I trained under the Carlson Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu team in the 90s, and I have a jiu-jitsu club up here in New York where I'm a teacher today. So I was around for the beginning of No Holds Barred and watched all of this, what's known now as MMA, watched it unfold. Back then in UFC 1, the Gracies and the Gracie name dominated everybody. They went through everyone like a buzzsaw. It was a huge, eye-opening experience for millions of people, continent to continent. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu totally disrupted the martial art world. And what it did was it split people into two sides. The one saying that I'll never be taken to the ground and I have a deadly strike that'll stop them from doing this. And on the other side, people who had actually, a fighter's eye noticed how devastatingly important it was to learn how to fight on the ground and accepted it and added it into their lifestyle, such as what I did myself. Very dominant stuff. But people my age who may have remembered the Gracies from UFC 1 would know that the Gracies had an open challenge to anyone who wanted to step up and fight. Come up and prove to us that you can beat us, and we'll surrender to you. We'll admit you're the better style. Many styles stepped up and challenged them, and nobody ever won. UFC competitor Yoji Anjo decides to jump on a plane, fly to California, and challenge none other than Rickson Gracie, who was the top fighter of the Gracie family, to a no-holds-barred fight. Gracie accepts the fight. Anjo gets totally destroyed in seconds. There was cameras there, there was film crew there was newspaper there from Japan. It was covered throughout Japan. It was huge news. This totally crushed the credibility of the UWF, put them in the tank, because, Rickson Gracie and the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was no joke. To all be honest, if you didn't know how to fight on the ground, it was quite simple. It doesn't really matter who you are or how good you are. If you don't know how to get up and get up properly, and a jiu-jitsu guy takes you to the ground, you're fucked. I don't care what you know. You could be a white belt and still beat somebody with some of the basics. So that's how the sport evolved and became MMA today, because people learned how to fight on the ground, and the Gracies weren't as dominant anymore because people learned how to fight back. That being said, the UWF's credibility tanked. So to try to gain some credibility, they worked an invasion angle where the UWF invaded New Japan Pro Wrestling and became part of New Japan. Now, this was all worked under the guidance of Inoki. He had total control of the matches and the matchups and the finishes. So the UWF angle was formed. The UWF decided to come in and destroy everybody from the New Japan side. They started like this is a war, and we're taking over, and one by one they're wiping out all their competitors. And they decided to start at the top with the IWGP champion, the Great Muta. Any of this sound familiar to you? NWO, maybe ring a bell. The takeover, another company. We're going to take over your company, blah, blah. Yeah, a lot of it has roots right here from this tournament. This takeover and this match that's going to take place on October 9th, 1995. Muta and Takada would battle all over Japan. The cards were huge. The matches were huge. The fans went totally apeshit. It was a gigantic success. It would last about a year and a half. And I'll save some for a little bit later on. But it would go on, about a good year and a half. First, let's just take a look inside the program a second. It's another huge one. Just wanted to give you that history so you understood where it was coming from, because it's going to tie in again later on with the NWO. Here's Muta with the IWGP belt, and here is Takada with the Luthez championship belt. Great looking shot of these two guys. I can't fit the whole damn thing in there. I'm sorry, but you get the idea of what it is. Another page. Champion, and they have all the statistics and height and weight and size and blah blah blah. Great looking shot of Takada. He was known as pictured as their greatest fighter. Of course, it's kayfabe sense. He had some MMA background, but wasn't the most successful at it as years went on when he joined Pride and fought Rickson Gracie later on. But the fans are totally buying into this. Muta comes out on top. And Takada falls, and the fans go crazy, and it puts a monkey in the wrench of the takeover. That was in October. Rematch to take place in 1996, January, at Wrestling World, which is Wrestle Kingdom, and the rematch for Takada and Fujinami here. Also, Antonio Inoki is taking on Vader, who was on the shoot wrestling side of UWF, who was the former UWF champion. This was also huge. Vader and Inoki going at it. This time, just some inside shots, color photos from their first battle. The Great Muta would go down, and the UWF takeover was successful. And Takada, here he is on the cover as winning the championship belt. First cover with the New Japan Pro Wrestling down, fans are down. It was just a huge, huge angle. And like I said, it lasted about a year and a half or so. And the final act, when it came down to it, when they were ending this angle, because it couldn't last forever, Takada would take on Hashimoto, and Hashimoto, new upcoming star who had also held the IWGP title once before, is stepping up and trying to dethrone the UWF champion. 67,000 people packed into the Tokyo Dome. One of the 67,000 just happened to be Eric Bischoff in attendance at ringside for this. And of course, this was Eric Bischoff's vision for the NWO, to bring this over to the WCW just a few short months later. This whole invasion angle from the NWO spawned from this match, from this angle here, and this match ending. The match ended Hashimoto defeating Takada and defeating him with the DDT, the Brainbuster, whatever you guys wanted to call it. Huge, huge news. The place went absolutely apeshit. The fans in Japan usually keep a lid on their cheering and their clapping. This was like none other the Tokyo Dome had ever seen. Absolute pandemonium when he defeated Takada and won the title. Inoki shaking hands with the new champion, and another shot of him. This would be the last time you would see this IWGP style belt. The belt would be changed to the more like a crowned top. Of a king crown to top at the border up top here, but the bottom would kind of stay the same. And this is your last look at Hashimoto with that style belt. And that was also the end of the takeover feud. Like I said, huge business in Japan. Really catapulted wrestling. It was at every household, every magazine, every newspaper. Meanwhile, WCW still floundering around, not doing hardly anything at all. 1995, we see a rare shot of Sting on the cover of a magazine all alone without a collage of photos. Pretty good looking shot. WCW is wasting him, and even the magazines see it in 1995. Nothing really happening in 1995. Things are kind of like status quo. It's just in between. ECW is on the rise. WCW is losing viewership. WWF is looked upon and trying to shake off the cartoonish reputation that it had. And things were about to get shaken up in the next 16 months. Sting would go on a hiatus and disappear, not making any ring appearances in matches during that 16 months, and would slowly come back with a totally darker gimmick. And while at this point, the NWO, you all know the history of the NWO, you don't need me to go into it. I thought it was important to tell you how the NWO got its start and where the influence came from. It came from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Eric Bischoff took the idea and just magnified it by 1,000 by making Hulk Hogan Hollywood Hulk Hogan and making Sting the Crow Sting. Sting back on the cover after a long absence, April 1997. I mean, he was on other covers in between, but nothing to this magnitude now. Nothing to where the popularity took off and skyrocketed like it did of the wrestler. Inside Wrestling 97 also got Sting and the NWO, Hogan as your WCW World Champion. And we'll look at another one. The fans are demanding it. Sting still had not wrestled. It's been over a year, better, a year to a year and a half, whatever the gimmick was. And August of 97's The Wrestler Dream match, Sting and Hogan, they have to meet. It has to happen. December 97, good-looking cover of WCW, No Way Out. Sting on the cover with the NWO posse in the background. WCW magazine with the Crow Sting. And this is a year-end review. It also has The Outsiders on the flip side with Hollywood Hogan. Great-looking magazine cover. 1997 continues on, and Great Muta makes a emergence, and with Masahiro Chono, they form the NWO Japan that formed on an episode of Nitro when they turned on Sonny Ono. People remember that. Really don't need much explaining. NWO now carries on in Japan, and people look at it like, NWO Japan, and that kind of sucked. Wrong. NWO was huge in Japan. Fans loved it, more so than the invasion angle from the UWF. Sting and Chono become the IWGP Tag Team Champions, and they've also got a fake Sting. Be that as it may, Fans in America couldn't stand it. Fans in Japan loved this guy more than the actual Sting themselves. This guy was ridiculously over in Japan. Fans totally loved him. And he's a heel, by the way. Totally loved the whole gimmick. That gimmick went on for over 20 years. He was still doing it up a handful of years ago, still appearing as the NWO Sting and still getting over with the fans. It was absolutely crazy. And the fans here, never even batted an eyelash at it. Well, mainly because they never did anything with it. They had him in a bunch of spots. He, did a bunch of runouts, and Sting just destroyed the fake Sting. They should have had a match together. Here is an autographed NWO Sting. Pretty rare to find one of these suckers, and basically because nobody wants one, except you're a lunatic like myself. A good-looking shot of the fake Sting, man. Cool dude, and a cool gimmick. If it only just took off in America, extremely over in Japan, to say the least. You just have to watch some old film to see it, to appreciate it. Sting and Hogan, match of the century, another fantasy piece coming to the magazines, only this time the fantasy piece is going to come true. Or is it? Who knows? Sting again and Hogan hitting every major magazine from the NWO times on the cover of Ringside with a brand new look. It went from Wrestling Ringside to now Ringside Wrestling. Yes, the name did make a change. WCW magazine shows the first coverage of Sting and Hogan, and it finally happens, and Sting takes the gold. Or does he? Takes it, he gives it back, he gets it back again. Like anyone else, you have a great angle, you have something the fans really wanted, and you did something stupid with it. And I mean, how do you fuck that up? You have him lose it the next night on Nitro? Come on, after waiting a year and a half to build this shit up? Pretty lame. It's a great way to alienate and piss off fans. Sting again on the cover of Wrestling All-Stars, and here he is with the gold. Can't see it with all the font covering it. Also, Abdullah the Butcher here making his appearance on a cover for the first time in a long time. Sting and Hogan continue to battle on Nitro and in the arenas. After Starrcade, Hogan would the title would be up for grabs. It was on the shelf for a little while, no champion. Then finally Sting took the title back and was a legitimate champion. Long story short, as we're moving through the magazines to try to progress the video along a little bit, there's problems in NWOville, and they split off into two separate factions, and there's the red and there's the white, and it's just a big mess, and both sides are fighting each other, and Sting joins the NWO Wolfpack in the red. Here's your first look at Sting with the face paint, and you're looking at Sting now, the new World Tag Team Champion. I say champion because it was a singles match with the Giant to determine the new tag team champions, who neither one of them had a partner. I mean, what are you doing? You're having a singles match for the tag team championship. Sting beats the Giant, and he gets to pick his partner to hold the belt with him after he wins the match. I mean, come on. This is the kind of shit you're doing. This is the kind of stuff that's going to piss people off and really look stupid. Be that as it may, NWO Sting was a tag team champion. I think he picked Scott Hall, or I don't know who he picked. Kevin Nash, I think. Don't even remember. That's how memorable the angle was. Meanwhile, in NWO, things don't really change much there either. There's another falling out with them. There's no Wolfpack over there. There is a separate team. Chono has a falling out with the Great Muta. Great Muta takes his handful of NWO guys, and they are faces. The Masahiro Chono takes a handful of his guys, and not really called NWO. They're calling it Team 2000. And it was a pretty rough battle between the two teams, and it got pretty interesting. Here's Muta now winning the IWGP Championship. He would face Scotty Norton. Here is the program. Scott Norton here as IWGP champion when he defended the title. Scott Norton is a member of the NWO, the black and white, and he was defending that title in Japan, and here is the program to that. He would go back and forth between WCW and Japan, but he held the IWGP, and he lost it to Muta. Chono, with his Team 2000, has the NWO Sting, Don Fry from the UFC and Pride, legitimate fighter, and shockingly making his appearance on TV, basically shocking the world, FMW's Onita appears on New Japan Pro Wrestling Television and joins Chono in Team 2000. That would have been like, Ric Flair leaving Starrcade and going to WrestleMania 1 and teaming up with Piper and Orndorff. I'd be like, what? Where the fuck did this come from? Onita was a great mix and a great shakeup to the feud and the angle in Japan. The fans ate it up. He wouldn't stay Onita for very long because he also had an alter ego, and he was known as the Great Muta. And it was a slight on the Great Muta back in 93 or 94. He did the same gimmick as the Great Muta with the face paint and the spewing the green and the red mist and so forth. And that went under for about 4 or 5 years. And he brought it back now to challenge the Muta from Team 2000 and challenging the NWO. The Great Onita takes on the Great Muta, who is previously Keiji Muto, going back to his alter ego, and they are to meet in a exploding barbed wire death match. First time ever in New Japan, exploding barbed wire. Gimmick matches like that just did not fly in New Japan. It was considered garbage wrestling. It was, this and that, and it was not to be upon respected and classy professional wrestlers and fighters. But they certainly adopted it enough to have it against Muta here in New Japan, and what a success it was. Here's a good look at Muta in his first ever exploding barbed wire death match, and he's back to that white demon face paint that I mentioned about, an hour ago when he was facing Sting. It was a hard angle to see that on the cover of the magazine. Here he is with Onita choking him with a kama, which is sharp. It's an actual like a curved hook with a stick and a chain wrapped in barbed wire across Onita's mouth. Great looking shot on the cover of Gong Weekly, September 1999. That match would continue as the Great Muta and the Great Nita drop back to Onita and Keiji Muto, no face paint. They would continue, their alter egos would continue to, this was very confusing shit. I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can to make you understand it. I'm leaving a lot of it out because it would be a 4-hour video, but great wrestling, great times in Japan. If you were a fan of this and you understood this, man, it was some of the best stuff. It's just a shame that it's a black eye in America. No one knew about it, no one cared about it, and everyone thought the NWO Japan sucked. It fucking did not. Absolutely gold in Japan. Back to Sting now after nothing really changing with Sting. He went back to his original face paint, got rid of the red. Macho Man Savage takes the gold on the cover of Superstar Wrestlers. And the year 2000 hits. Sting, Hogan, NWO kind of break up at this point. The NWO was just about finished. WCW is heading in another direction. Hogan would also go back to his red and yellow gimmick as well. And making his return to WCW is the Great Muta in makeup, partnering up with Vampiro and winning the WCW Tag Team Championship belts against the team of Chronic, who was a hell of a looking tag team. Jacked up, good looking dudes. Man, it's a shame that they didn't go any further in their careers. But Vampiro and Muta win the tag team championships of the world, WCW version, and this is signed by Vampiro. We're going to skip ahead just a couple of years from maybe not even one. This is like May of 2001. The Great Muta leaves All Japan for the first time, venturing away from WCW and joins the enemy, All Japan. Muta now with a new look, shaved head and a goatee, and he becomes a champion, capturing the Triple Crown. Triple Crown is the All Japan Heavyweight Championship belt. When you're the champion, you win 3 belts. It's the NWA International Heavyweight Championship, the NWA United National Heavyweight Championship, and the Giant Baba's PWF World Heavyweight Championship belt, which has lineage directly to Ricky Dozan and the Japan Wrestling Association's Heavyweight Championship with the All Asian Heavyweight Championship belt. A lot of confusing shit there. I don't expect you to gather all that. For those of you who know what I'm saying, get it. It was a big deal that All Japan, that is the main title. The Triple Crown is the main title for All Japan and Muta. Now, a multiple IWGP and All Japan champion. Not many people had that honor. I think maybe, if he wasn't the first, he was the second. But there was only maybe 2 or 3 people at that point to ever do that. Muta, again, on the cover of Gong Weekly with the Triple Crown Heavyweight Championship belts. This is another one of my autographed photos of Muta. Hard to see with the busy cover, but here he is, because I had to get something signed with him with the All Japan belts. And on the back, this is just another photo with him when he came back again as the Great Muta later on. He would go from that, face would come back again. I don't need to get into it, but he would go back to the gimmick again, once again, with the new, like what they called like the skin mask rather than the face paint. Quite a different look, and he would bring that into New Japan. All Japan, and it was a totally over gimmick again. Muta constantly reinventing himself, constantly making himself relevant between 3 different gimmicks. Almost 4, if you really call it that, and he was successful everywhere he went. See him now with every single title almost that there is to hold. It looks like, what the hell's he got on? I'll break it down for you. This is the Triple Crown All Japan Championship belt. Okay, I just explained what all 3 of those were: the International, the United National, and the PWF. You get 3 belts for 1 championship. This is the All Japan Tag Team titles. Okay, you get the International NWA Tag Team Championship as well as the PWF Heavyweight Championship Tag Team belt. So there was 2 belts merged. So the All Japan's Tag Team consists of 2 different company styles belts, and All Japan's Heavyweight consists of 3 different Heavyweight Championship belts from 3 different lineages. And he is also the IWGP Tag Team Champion here. So this is one half of the Tag Team Champions, and there's only 1 belt for that. So he's wearing, I don't know, 7 belts, 6 belts, and there's only 3 different titles being held at the same time. Only 3, right? I mean, who's ever done it? It's hard to be a multiple champion. This guy holds 3 belts in 2 different companies and 3 different styles. Unbelievable. Muta has it all right here. This magazine is more like a book. It's entirely about Muta and his championships and his All Japan, and some great photos of him in here. Great. I'm not going to show them all, but it's huge. It goes on for days like this with all of Muta and all the championships and all the factions and different gimmicks that he had over the years. I highly recommend this magazine if you can find it. Very thick, a lot of pages. And now they're talking Muta to challenge the new IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Remember I told you here was the new style, the belt. Hashimoto had held that once. It was the last time you're going to see that. Here's the new style. Keeping it simple, the old style came back too and went towards the strong style fighters. Never mind, we'll just leave that part out. This is Fujita the champion. The match between the 2 doesn't happen. But the Great Muta, a couple of years later, does become the IWGP Heavyweight Champion once again with the shaved head look. Now the first time as champion in the New Japan territory. This is 2009's issue from May 15th. Also featured with who used to be one half of Road Warrior, Power Warrior, Hawk's partner from the Hellraisers, Kensky, and here is Muta with the IWGP champion. He is on the cover with the Pro Wrestling Noah's Heavyweight Championships belt. That's the 3rd company in Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah. Signed magazine of Muta, one of my favorites, the favorite one of Muta on the magazine cover. He's here with the IWGP belt as well as the All Japan belts with 2 different gimmicks. And there it is, great looking cover of the Great Muta. What happened to Sting, you might say? Sting went back and forth. He took some time off, didn't wrestle for a couple of years, and made a comeback in the Total Nonstop Action, became the NWA champion there. Total Nonstop Action becomes the Total Nonstop Action heavyweight champion, I guess, if you want to, whatever the fuck that means. But he becomes the champion of it, and here he is with the Total Nonstop Champion heavyweight world title. Really doesn't make much sense. But there it is. Sting coming back on top, still relevant after all these years, and it's good to see. Sting's career would continue another 10 years or so. This is 2009, yeah, more than another 14. But here's just a look. There's nothing else to show in between. He's, with any meaning, here he is with the title. He wasn't on any other covers as champion with the belts, so there's really nothing to really discuss. We're jumping way ahead now. We're going to skip a good 12, 13 years, and the Great Muta decides to go for the trifecta and leave New Japan and go to Pro Wrestling Noah, and he would become the Pro Wrestling Noah heavyweight champion. I forget the name of the Noah championship belt. It's not called Noah, but he would become the champion. Now the only one to hold all three world titles from all three major companies is the Great Muta. This is in 2021, where he's just about 60 years old. Muta once again, and on the cover just a week later, and May 5th, 2021. And another shot, all the magazines covering Muta's triumphant win of winning the title over in Noah. No one's ever done it. Really a great nod to one of the best wrestlers to ever come out of Japan. And once again, just before Muta losing the title, giving a send-off and waving to the fans, kind of futuristic here because he's still a champion, but would lose it just 2 weeks later. But a great nod of giving him that world title once again, and Muta would kind of bow out gracefully and be ready to retire. At least you thought he did. Not without saying goodbye to one more Great Muta. Say that was your end of looking at Keiji Muto. Muta makes one last run as the Great Muta in 2023. And here he is on a cover of a magazine, and there's an angle that happened. Sting would continue on in a new company called AEW that most of you know. Most of you who don't know, probably most of us don't know because most of us who watch this channel don't watch anything today. But Sting was still wrestling, and he was in the new company AEW, and he was tag team partnered with this kid Darby Allin, who looks like he's actually smaller than a high school kid. He looked, not very built, very athletic, crazy, insane moves, fantastic high flyer, and that's what wrestling is today. Guys like us really wouldn't appreciate that too much because we're stuck in our ways, we're grumpy and old, and we like our stuff the way we liked it, and we don't like this new shit. But Darby Allin was a hell of a wrestler, is a hell of a wrestler, and very athletic, and Sting really helped push him along in his career, and they would become tag team champions together. Sting was getting the shit beat out of him on TV one day, and coming to the rescue out of nowhere was the Great Muta, shocking the world. Well, shocking the older guys because the younger generation has no clue who this dude even is. Only people like us would get it. And Sting's getting beat up. He's tied to a chair. They're beating him with a bat. And then all of a sudden the music and the lights hit and the Great Muta appears, practically killing some girl in the process. I don't know whatever happened to that chick. I mean, she got knocked off the ring apron, was supposed to go through a table, missed the table and smashes the back of her head into a guardrail. Camera kind of softly caught that and really didn't pan over that very much. I don't know what happened to that girl. I don't know who she is. I just was hoping, like, oh my God, I cringed hoping that the chick was okay because she definitely got hurt. But here is Muta helped out, came to Sting's rescue after all these years of battling each other, starting at the same time and practically finishing their careers at the same time. Great to see Muta finish out his legacy on a quick run in America to save Sting out of nowhere. Thought it was a really cool angle that would have went over better if the people knew who Muta was. Muta continued on, and that led to a match with Muta and Sting and Darby Allin, and we're going to take a quick look at it. Here's Muta with the face, his final goodbye, where it says bye-bye on his face paint with the demon look, and it was a six-man tag, Sting and Allen and Muta. Here's Muta again in the kabuki outfit, and here are the guys at the bottom. Some in-action shots as well, good-looking shots of Sting during the match of a six-man. Also with Muta, I think it goes on for another page. Yeah, good-looking shot. Muta with the dragon whip and also spewing the spit out into the air. And this would be Muta's, one of his last magazine covers, probably one of his best magazine covers to come out of Japan. A great looking shot of the Great Muta. And he would retire just a week after that. Sting would continue on for a little bit, about a year or so more. And like I said, him and Darby Allin would become tag team champions. Here's Sting with his final belt, the AEW World Tag Team Championship belt, and they would take on two young douchebags, challenging them for the title. And you would think, Sting would pass the torch and hand it off to the younger guys, and very cool of the Young Bucks not taking the title, and Sting would retire as a world champion. That's pretty cool. Sting's last match was a tag team match against the Young Bucks and Darby Allin, and Sting goes out on top as he retires. Pretty cool legacy, pretty cool end to a wild career. We touched on part of it in this hour and 25-minute video. I thought this was going to be a fast, quick video, and lo and behold, me running my mouth, and I don't shut up. I felt like some things were important to point out, but it was a great look back at two fantastic icons in the sport and also the entertainment aspects of professional wrestling. Thanks for joining me, guys, and we'll see you on the next.